Awesome. All right, we are sitting at about 7 o'clock, and we've got some new faces on here, and I am excited for today's session. I am expecting it to be a smaller crowd. Maybe we'll get 1 or 2 more people popping in, but it should be pretty intimate. So if you have any questions about our cooking demonstrations today, go ahead and put them in the chat. And try to keep yourself on mute. That way we can interrupt our chefs kind of in an organized manner and to the best of our ability. We're kind of managing 2 timelines with cooking. And I know you all know how challenging that is. So we're also going to be a little bit different today than we usually are. And we're going to kind of get started. And then depending on how our chefs are progressing through their efforts, when we've got some downtime, we'll take a step back and we'll do community introductions. So, and Lynn, unless you need more time, I could pass it on over to you.
Sounds good, Bree. Just a sound and audio visual check.
Yep, looks good. I can see and hear you.
All right, very good. Well, welcome everybody. Bear with us. This is the first time that we've done a cooking fireside chat, so we may have a few hiccups, but just be patient. You'll learn something no matter how this rolls out. But I'm Lynn Lewis. I'm one of the founding members of Artemis, Georgia. Lifelong hunter. I identify myself with hunting, and so does a lot of my family. I've been doing it since I was probably 12. And I like to hunt all kinds of species, but I also like to hunt duck. So I had a few ducks in the freezer, so we decided to show y'all how to cook duck. And my first suggestion is that I just started cooking duck. I was intimidated by cooking duck. And so I would just challenge everybody, don't be intimidated. Just give it a try if you have the opportunity. It's just like anything else. The more you do it, the more you learn and the better you get at it. Plus, it's really fun to be able to enjoy the wild game that you harvested yourself. So I did want to go over just some basic duck stuff, just to kind of give y'all a broader context of ducks, harvesting them and preparing them and cooking them. So what I'm going to prepare for y'all today is one of North America's most beautiful ducks. This is a wood duck. Unfortunately, he's missing his wings because we used his wings to train some dogs for retrieving, because the wings are very beautiful too. But this is a very common duck that you'll find in all kinds of swamps and creeks. Definitely our most abundant. Fairly small, so just make note of some of the size you see on a wood duck. These are what's called a dabbler. They dive and with their butts up in the air and eat vegetation. So that's one reason duck breast and duck meat is so tasty, is because of the food that they eat. But just to give you an idea about some other ducks that we have, this is a green-winged teal. This is a beautiful bird. Bree actually got one a couple of years ago when we were duck hunting. Got that beautiful green. These are relatively small ducks. You can see the size comparison with the wood duck. They're pretty small. And when you're hunting them, you have no qualms about which duck just flew over you. They come in like fighter jets, really, really fast, so they're hard to kill. But anyway, green-winged teal, again, is a dabbler like the wood duck and really good to eat. And then we have another duck over here that's very common around this area. This is called the ringneck duck, which is a little bit of a misnomer. They do have sort of a chestnut-colored ring around their neck, but you really can't see it unless you're eyeball to eyeball. So it's not a very good identifier when you're in the field. But beautiful colorations, very pretty in the sun, a lot of iridescence that you probably can't see on camera, but a very beautiful bird. I've never had a ringneck duck, but they are 2 dabblers that primarily eat vegetation, so I suspect that they're good. And then we have, this is a hooded merganser. These are very common in the wintertime, and you'll see them a lot on farm ponds. He's still a little frozen, or I would prop his neck up a little bit, but they have these beautiful, this is a male, they have this beautiful all of these ducks are males. That's one reason they're so colorful. Their hens are more drab in coloration. He's got this beautiful hood, hence his name. And a lot of times you'll see this hood before you even see the duck because it's such a bright white. But you can see his beak, very, very different from the dabbler. The dabblers are wide. They're grazers. They're reaching for vegetation and seeds. This is a fish eater. He uses that beak with some little teeth in there to catch fish. Typically, fish-eating ducks don't taste very good. They taste like what they eat, which is fish. If you don't mind that, then you can definitely try cooking them, but that's just a little bit of a warning there. Don't be disappointed if you cook up a fish eater and are a little disappointed in how it tastes. So let's see. I did want to mention this is hopefully what we're going to come out with once I show you how to dress this bird out. But one thing I did want to make mention, and we may find this on the bird that I'm going to do, these birds have been harvested with a shotgun. So they're little tiny pellets. And so you may find some shot in some of your meat that you're using. So just be sure and find those if you see the little tracks where the pellets went in. They are non-toxic. They're not lead because it's illegal to hunt ducks with lead ammunition. So if you eat one, it's fine. But it will break your tooth if you're not careful and chomp down into one. So do be careful of that. And the other thing I wanted to mention, these are wild animals. They are not given antibiotics and medications like our domestic birds are. And they have parasites. They get diseases. And sometimes you'll get a duck, and especially in the breast, they call it rice breast. It's a form of parasite that looks like little specks of rice within the breast meat. So just be aware that you may run into something like that from time to time. Just do yourself a favor. You can look up some duck diseases. There's a wildlife diseases group out of the University of Georgia called Squidus. I'll see if I can drop some information in the chat that you can actually purchase a book that talks about the different wildlife species and their diseases, which is really handy to know. Not going to talk a lot about that tonight because otherwise you might not eat the duck. But anyway, so I went over different sizes to give you an idea. Mallard ducks are another species we see a lot in this area. The greenheads, I think probably everybody has seen a picture of a mallard from time to time. They're about the size of a ringneck, a little bit bigger. So you naturally will get more meat from that bird. Okay, so I think that was everything I wanted to go over in general. So normally when I harvest a duck, I would do this immediately after getting back to camp. Processing these birds, because they have so many feathers, can be pretty messy. So you want to do it outside if you can. If you have to do it inside, and you can even do this outside as well, use a bowl of water to wet the feathers, and it keeps them from going everywhere because they literally explode like tiny little downy feathers and get in your eyes and get in your nose. So just remember, try to do it outside as soon as the animal has been killed, and try to use water to your advantage to help keep some of those feathers down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dip this bird in this water and start plucking it a little bit. And just to let you know, all the feathers on these birds grow this way. And birds actually have feather tracts. It's not all feathers. They'll have feather tracts where they have feathers, bare skin, feathers. So it's not completely all feathers. So when you're plucking them, you don't have a plucker. There are pluckers out there that you can buy. You want to grab little pinches and just jerk against the grain, just like that, to get the feathers off. But I'm going to pass it over to Melissa while I'm trying to get this bird plucked and a little bit more prepped. So I'll see y'all in a few minutes as it switches to Melissa.
All right, are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Melissa Halsey, and I am also a founding member of Artemis, Georgia. And tonight I'm going to be cooking rainbow trout. And trout, if you've never prepared game, this is your entry into it. Like, you can't mess this up. So this is about as easy as you're going to get with preparing something that you have personally harvested. And I'm gonna do it two ways. We wanted to do this over the campfire, but unfortunately the weather did not cooperate. But I'm going to show you what I would do if I was backpacking and just, this is all I have in my pack and I can still have a gourmet meal. Or if I prepare it at home and I get a little bit more intricate with it. So what we have here are 2 rainbow trout, and I think this is a good size, indicative of what you would catch. In Georgia, we have a lot of opportunities to get these because there are several places that are stocked in the early spring that we can fish for them. One of my favorite places is up around Blue Ridge, and these are, although I confess, these come from Publix, okay? I'm just gonna say it. I had nothing in my freezer, so there you go. But we're gonna pretend that these are wild caught. Trout is one of the easiest fish to cook for several reasons, but one of the reasons is you'll notice it still has its tail, it still has its head, and that's okay. And all you do when you process a trout is you would just make the slit, you pull out all of the internal organs, give it a good rinsing, and there you go. Your trout is ready to be cooked. So tonight we're going to do it again like we would if we were out on a campfire. And my first recipe is just that. If I'm out and I'm backpacking and I've just caught this guy, how am I going to prepare it? Well, I'm going to clean it. I'm going to put it in my little tin foil. I have some olive oil in here. I'm just going to glaze it a little bit on the outside, put it a little bit on the inside. And I have a spice packet here that I've prepared. It is kosher salt, pepper, garlic powder, and I can send you the recipe. We can send a link to it. Salt, pepper, garlic powder, dried oregano, dried parsley, dried sage, and dried thyme. So like the old song, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Did I say rosemary? I hope I did. So we're just going to take a little bit and we're going to just put it on the inside there. Rub a little bit on the outside. Get a little bit more. Rub it on the other side. And we're just going to close this foil packet up. And if you've camped a lot, you've done foil packets with everything from hamburger to chicken. And it's the same thing that we're doing with trout. If we were on the campfire, this would be ready to go on the grate, just like this. So that's trout number 1. Trout number 2 is, if I'm at home and I have access to fresh ingredients, how am I going to prepare it differently? Same trout, same way of cleaning it, but I'm going to use some real butter because butter's just great, isn't it? And I'm going to just slather the outside of him with butter. I'm going to take the rest of it. I'm going to slather the inside of him. Don't you like how I call it a him? Like on Artemis, we wouldn't kill a female trout, would we? This is some fresh chopped garlic, and I know my hands look like a mess right now. So I'm just going to put some garlic in there. I have a fresh bundle from the herb garden of parsley, sage, rosemary, and I do not have any fresh thyme, but we're just going to stuff that in there like that. Go ahead and take these off since they're pretty used up at this point. I have some salt and pepper in here. I'm just going to sprinkle it a little bit. Sprinkle the inside, sprinkle the other side. cut a few pieces of fresh lemon. Put it right on there. Again, make my little foil packet. I have my oven at 350 degrees, and we're going to cook these guys for about 30 minutes. Now, my husband's from the South, and his way of cooking these trout would be to batter them and fry them. And he likes to make fun of me because I'm from New York and I don't fry things. So this is my way of cooking. But again, an equally easy way if you're at home is you can just dip it in whatever your favorite fish batter is, fry them with the heads on it, fry them with the tails. Actually, it becomes a little fight in our house because the tails taste like a potato chip when they're fried. So who gets to eat the tail of the fish? That's just another option for those of you that like to fry things. So we're just gonna put this in 350-degree oven. I'm gonna turn it back to Lynn so she can tell us how we're gonna cook our duck.
Sorry, my live. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, now I'm live. So I have plucked the breast of this duck, and here's my caveat. This duck has been in the freezer probably 2 years. So unfortunately, when I plucked it, it pulled a lot of the skin off. This bumpy part is the skin. You can skin ducks and eat them that way, but the skin is really good, and there's a layer of fat, which the amount of fat will depend on what condition the duck is when you shot it. But unfortunately, pull some of that skin off, and then you'll see a little bit of freezer burn on this breast as well. So I'm glad I brought my backup breast meat. Anyway, I do want to demonstrate really quickly. You see my bowl full of feathers. That really helps a lot to keep the feathers from going everywhere. But again, you just grab a couple pinch of feathers and you just pull against the grain, and they pop right off. And then you can drop them in the water and get them off your hands that way. So I'm gonna leave this one. Well, let me show you what you would normally do to get those boneless breasts. So you can see this is the sternum, which is the middle of the breast. It's the breastbone. If anybody's done turkeys or chickens, they're anatomically the same, with just a little bit of difference. But so what I do is I use that as my landmark, and I'll cut right down either side of it. And a sharp knife is your friend, so make sure you have one of those. And if you'll take a look at this meat, this is just like steak. It's a very dark meat. The reason it's so dark, it has a lot of iron in it. That's because ducks are long distance flyers, and they need all that extra iron and blood flow in their muscles so that they can go those long distance migrations. But all you do is just kind of carve around. There's actually two muscles in the breast. One allows the wings to go up, and then the other one makes the wings go down. I can't remember which one's which, but I do know that part. Anyway, you just slowly start to pull out the breast as you trim against, there's a bone, and you can just trim against that and gently pull. And then eventually you'll have a nice, beautiful piece of breast. And you would do it on both sides, of course. And if you have anybody that likes to make jewelry or flies, fishing flies, tile fishing flies, these feathers are really useful for that. They're very, very beautiful. Just take a minute to admire all the different colors and see if you have any friends that might want to use any of these feathers. So normally what happens is when you get this breast off and it still has the skin on it, it'll have little teeny tiny filamentous feathers. And you don't have to take them off. I kind of like taking them off. It makes the breast prettier. There's a couple of ways to do that. I have a friend of mine from South Carolina. She actually waxes her birds. She brings hot water to a simmer. She gets the wax that you can find in the like the jelly area when they have the canning goods and that kind of stuff. It's the same kind of wax that you would seal jelly jars with. anyway, you use a couple of blocks of those and you take a bird and you just dunk it, the whole body. And the feathers, once that wax hardens and cools off, it cracks and takes all the feathers with it, and you're left with a breast that looks just like something from the grocery store. It's a little labor intensive, but it is kind of cool. But another way to do those tiny little filament hairs off is to burn them off. And you, if you've got like a little torch that some people have in their kitchen, that's actually better than this because you can kind of get it at an angle. But you can see where these little filamentous feathers have already been burned off. And you just run it over. You don't actually cook the skin at all. You just burn off that hair or feathers. It doesn't smell real good, but it will make your breast a lot prettier. So anyway, let me make a little room here. So once you have these breasts, again, dig out any shot that you might have. Get those filamentous feathers off of there. Like I said, keeping the skin on is really the way to go because it's very, very good. And this is super simple. I won't say it's fail-safe, but it is super simple. This is the seasonings I use. You can use whatever you want. I loved what Melissa just mentioned about her seasonings, and mine are similar, just not as many. This is kosher salt, black pepper, and garlic powder. 3/4 cup of salt, 1/4 cup of pepper, 1/4 cup of garlic powder. I use it on everything. It's great to marinate and flavor. But you just sprinkle this on fairly liberally, but remember the meat is not very thick, so don't get too crazy or you'll overpower the meat. But you can see how dark this is. This is going to be just like eating a steak. And you actually want to cook it that way as well. You don't have to use flour unless you want to. I don't, just because I'm lazy. And this has always been really good. Follow me over to the stove. So you don't have to use cast iron, but I like it because you're able to get a good sear on the duck with cast iron. Sometimes it might stick a little bit, so it's good to have tongs for flipping as well as a spatula just in case it does stick a little bit. But I put it on about medium heat, and it's been heating up a little bit now, so it might be trying to get hotter than I need it. And you can use olive oil, you can use regular vegetable oil, but just remember both your olive oil and your butter have lower burning temperatures, and you got to keep an eye on them and make sure that they don't start to scorch, because that makes for not good duck. And see how that butter's already starting to get a little brown? That means my temperature is getting close to where I want it. If you really want a super crisp skin, you can really get this thing scorching hot and really crisp it up. I like kind of the medium because I'm always worried about burning it. So once I see the butter turn a little bit brown, I think I'm at a good place where I can go ahead and start cooking the duck. I like to do skin down first. Don't particularly have a reason. That's just kind of the way I've always done it. I think probably because it tends to brown better like the first time you put the meat in versus when you flip it to the second side. But you want to cook this just like you would a steak. You want this rare, medium rare. If you cook it to even a medium or especially a well, it's not going to be good. It'll be dry. They don't have a lot of fat. It's not like steak you buy at the store where you have fat marbled all through it. That fat they have is just between the skin and the meat. So you can overcook these really, really quickly. And because these are steaks, so to speak, I only cook these for maybe because of the size, maybe 2 minutes a stack. So I'm going to let this continue to cook, and then I will pass it back to Melissa and her trout. And hopefully when you come back, I'll have a good looking duck breast to show you.
Okay, due to the magic of TV, our trout is ready. And Jen Pope, who is another amazing member of Artemis, is the camera woman. And so she and I are going to try a little bit of each fish. This is the one that was made the campfire style. And you can see that it's all, look how pretty that is. all that nice white meat right there. Trout is, if you've not eaten it, it's a very mild fish. And it, you know, kind of like salmon, it's a non-fishy fish, right? And it does have a lot of bones in it. So if you are eating it, you know, we all have our own ways. And if I'm eating this on the campfire, let's just be honest, I'm not going to have a fork and a knife with me. So I'm going to show you how I would eat it if I was outside. And I just kind of pull it. Look at that. Nice, white, flaky. Pull my little bones out right there.
Should I show you chewing?
No, don't show me chewing. But to get the bones out easily, again, I'm doing this campfire style. See how you can see its little spine going right down it? Look how nice that's all cooked. 30 minutes. I can just grab one end of my little spine and pull. Now look, why doesn't it work when I'm on? There we go. And I can just peel my meat right off of it. I gave Jen the harder fish because she has to do this in a more sophisticated way. Look at that, it just peels right off. And you can see there's my little bones right there. You feel it all the way down.
That
And
looks good.
there is my campfire feast. So if I was outside, you know, I just brought my little packet of salt and pepper and olive oil, and 30 minutes later, here you go. So with that, I'm gonna rinse my hands off. And I'm gonna turn it over to Jen. And there you go.
Okay, so I'm going to eat with a knife and fork. But again, just to show you the inside, the fresh herbs on this one. And I'm going to eat it much the same way. While I'm peeling back some of the skin, I will tell a funny on myself. My husband was stationed in Germany, and we went to a trout farm to eat fish. And I had no idea what to do with a fish with a head and tail. When it came to me at the table, I just kind of looked at my husband and I was like, help. But the nice, kind German couple who invited us showed us both how to eat the fish. And it's a little bit different from the way Melissa did. I'm gonna do my best to peel the skin off. All right, I'm just gonna start here at the top. Do you want to peel it all the way back? There is a cheek in a trout, and it's supposed to be the sweetest piece of the meat in the fish. So you just pop that little, it's like finding an oyster in a fish. So that's a trout cheek. Best part of the fish. When I'm eating with knife and fork, there's a row of bones that run right down this line here. I'll generally just slip my knife in there, and you can feel the bones underneath your knife. And then take my fork and just lift gently. And you can see the bones where I've lifted them off of this is the rib cage of the fish. You can taste the herbs. And the pepper.
I have water.
And then I do the same thing on the back. And what you're gonna do is complete the fish all the way down. So you're going to take all this meat off with a knife, preferably. And again, just like Melissa's, I've got this carcass now. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing Melissa did, but just from half. You have to kind of get it started. And when you pull it up, you have a boneless trout fillet left on the bottom. So lots of good eating there.
And when we were doing this, when the fresh herbed one came out of the oven and we opened that packet, I mean, you could just smell, you know, it just lit up the room with that wonderful smell of fresh herbs. So I encourage everyone, if you do not have an herb garden, you know, I'd be happy to help you one as a sidebar, let me know. And they're very easy and they make all the difference in the world when you're cooking. So thank you, camera woman Jen, for illustrating that. And we're going to turn it back over to Lynn.
Hi, I did want David to take a quick video of one of the duck breasts cooking. This is the skin side, nice and crispy looking. There's the other side. Again, I only did it 2 or 3 minutes on both sides. And again, just like steak, you want to loosely cover it with foil and give it 5 to 10 minutes to rest. Temperature will go up. It'll continue to cook for a few minutes. So, I need 5 or so minutes. So now might be a good time to take questions or if anybody put anything in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't have anything listed in the chat, but does anyone have any burning questions about what we've seen so far?
I have a question about the trout.
Let's hear it.
Right.
So I've only ever had farm raised trout. Is there somewhere you can fish for trout that is not farm raised?
I fish around Blue Ridge. And in the springtime, early spring, well, actually, I did it last year in August. I'm thinking August 26th was my anniversary, and I caught a great one up there. So I would just, there was a guide service. I can't recall the name of the gentleman that I used, but I remember he was out of Blue Ridge, Georgia, and we just natural trout. And it you know, so there are plenty of places to fish in Georgia that are not farm raised.
That's a really good question, is how do we find all of these species that we're interested in cooking? And there are good resources on the georgiawildlife.com website from the state agency, where they've got a trout stream interactive map. And so you can actually, I can share it with you guys if you're interested, since it's here, since I'm looking at it. So this is the Trout Streams of Georgia map from that website. I assume you can see it. And I am not a trout fisher folk. I wish I was, but I really am not good at it. But what you can see here is they've got all of the streams. So I just happened to zoom in on Vogel State Park. And usually you can click on these interactive maps and they'll give you more information. about what type of fishing might be available, which species of fish might be available, where are you going to camp to get there, what are the rules and the regulations about fishing, what are your daily takes and things like that. And so that website's going to be a really good resource for you in regards to figuring out where you want to go. Just make sure wherever you go is public land. That's going to be pretty important there. All righty, we have a question in the chat from Coral. If cooking trout over a campfire, how long would you recommend cooking the trout? And my question to go with that is, what if you don't have a grate?
I would say, well, you can do it. I've actually done it most of the time without a grate, and you just kind of, get what I do is just find some rocks, and I just elevate my foil packet on rocks as close as I can to the embers. And it works, just as well. And I would start with 15 minutes because generally, you're going to be closer to the heat, if you will, and it'll cook a little bit faster. So I would start with 15 minutes, open the packet, check it. If it's done, enjoy. And if not, continue cooking in 5-minute intervals. But yeah, it's so easy to cook. It's one of my favorite things when I'm camping. Just catch it, and 30 minutes later, you have a great meal.
I think something that I've always kind of, with all food, it's kind of like, how do I know when it's done? And would you describe it as kind of like the flakiness of the meat?
Yes, it's going to be very white and very flaky. I mean, you can see like right now, I mean, it just peels off. Your skin peels off, your bones peel off, and you can just see how it kind of fans apart. It's very moist. So once it turns white and is flaky and your bone just peels out of it, it's done. And trout is very forgiving. If you leave it on there a little bit too long, it's, that's okay. It's in the foil packet. It's not going to dry out as much as, maybe some meats have a tendency to do. So it's very forgiving. Like I said, best thing for beginners ever.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Lynn, did you want to go ahead and show us, are you ready to show your end product?
Hey, yeah, I think so. It's only been 5 minutes. I would normally wait 10, so it may be a little more rare than normal, but I'm happy to take a look at it and see what we've got.
If you want to wait, we can do introductions.
Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Just a couple more minutes.
Cool. I jumped the gun. So we are 3/4 the way through our call, just about, almost, not quite. But this is a good opportunity for us to introduce ourselves. And I'm super excited that we are joined by Milo this evening. So I will start, and I'll do the introduction if you guys just want to follow that. Follow my pattern. So as you guys know, I'm Bree Bashford. I work for Georgia Wildlife Federation, and I am so excited that we are here this evening learning about how to cook these items because they're intimidating. So thank you to Lynn and to Melissa and to Jen for all of your hard work and sharing this information with us. So Nina, do you want to go ahead and tell us your name and what, maybe if you have cooked wild game, what have you cooked? And if you haven't, what do you want to cook?
My name is Nina Stafford. I have cooked, I've caught fish that I've cooked. I've caught, what else? Let's see. I got some deer. I cooked that. I found an amazing bourbon recipe for that, and it was so good. And then what else? I have chickens, so I've done in my chickens and cooked them, and so that's probably it, but maybe forgetting something.
one of the biggest things I've struggled with backyard chickens is them being tough. How do you overcome the toughness in your backyard chickens?
Pretty much at 16 weeks, they're ready to go. If you wait past that, they're what you call stew chickens.
There we go. That might be the difference there. Awesome. Thank you, Nina. All right. Coral, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Coral Minchie, also with the Georgia Wildlife Federation. And as far as game meat, we've cooked venison and squirrel. So, but I don't think besides that, I've eaten a lot, but I haven't necessarily cooked a lot.
We got to get you fishing. You have prime access. She lives on Tybee Island, y'all. Like, why doesn't she fish?
I know. It's a shame. I really need to. My husband used to go all the time before we got married and had kids. So we need to get out there and get the fish because we have a lot right off our coast. And I know that they're good eating. So
It just takes time, right? You conquered the squirrel and the venison, so you're on a good track. With that, I want to introduce Milo. He is also with Georgia Wildlife Federation. Do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm a new intern with the Georgia Wildlife Federation Academics Afield, and I'm a Master's of Masters of Public Health and Environmental Health at Fort Valley State. So I was just really interested in it. Dr. Samples had introduced it to me. I've always been interested in conservation and just really didn't have that side of the hunting side of it. I didn't really know much about that side of it. So that's what interested me about Academics Afield. But yeah, I've cooked. I have killed and cooked animals before religiously. I was raised where we have to eat kosher meat. So my father, before he passed away, was really interested in teaching me some aspects of that. But unfortunately, before he passed away, I didn't really get a chance to learn as much with him. But that's why this is going to hopefully expose me more to it. But I do like to fish and I do like to hunt. I just wanted a chance to really work with smart people that are already in the field and, learn that way.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you part of the GWF family and glad that you stopped in for an Artemis fireside chat. For those that aren't familiar, Academics Afield is our college Learn to Hunt program. So our two big programs are Artemis Georgia, which is our women's initiative, and then Academics Afield, which is our college age audiences. And Coral actually oversees the Academics Afield program, and she has interns at all of our participating universities who help recruit students and organize and make connections. So Milo is our connection our intern, our coordinator at Fort Valley State University. So thank you, Milo, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I think we have Heather. How do you say your last name, Heather?
Hi, it's Heather Gupte.
Okay.
Nice to meet you all. I actually live in Florida, but I can see Georgia right now across the water, and I own a house in St. Mary's, so hopefully that qualifies me. I was talking to a consulting client, Kim Bednarik of the Okefenokee Swamp, and told her that I really want to get back into archery. And then she told me about this group, and I thought, wow, especially because I've been a huge Artemis fan from mythology for almost 50 years, if you can believe that. And so that's what got me in. And I've cooked a lot of venison, and I went to culinary school about 25 years ago and made a lot of venison and wild boar sausage. But the chefs tonight taught me a bunch of things. So this was such an incredibly well done program. hats off to all of you.
Oh, thank you for that. And so is this your first interaction with Artemis or Artemis, Georgia specifically?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that it was a positive experience for you, and looking forward to getting to know you for another opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay, that leaves, we've got Morgan, if you want to introduce yourself real quick. Oh, there we go. Yes, Morgan, please introduce yourself.
Hello. So my name is Morgan. So I am in North Georgia area, just north of Gainesville. I currently have a 9-month-old who is attached at the hip. But today, I guess I learned more just about like how fast you cook trout. I didn't realize it was that quick. So I might have to try that. We normally cook venison and then things like pheasant or quail. Because I do a little more upland hunting than waterfowl hunting.
Very good. We might need to pick your brain on how to get an Artemis event that's a little bit more focused towards upland. Because that's not a strength of mine, and it's something I want to try.
All right, sounds good.
Right. Did I get everyone? Okay. Lynn, how are the duck breasts coming?
It looks really good. So I've already taken one of the breast halves out and carved it up. And I was a little worried it would be a little too rare, but now it looks absolutely perfect. So I'm hoping this one will look perfect as well. I like to cut it a little bit thin, and you're going across the grain, so that helps a little bit with the tenderness. Again, sometimes wild game, it's not domestic, so you need to adjust expectations. They do taste a little bit different, and they do have a little bit different texture. And that can vary by animal to animal as well. So when you start trying some of this wild game for the first time, you really don't need to compare it to domestic, because they are very different. Anyway, this looks really, really good. I do like to pair this with wild rice. I don't know what it is about duck and wild rice, but they go really well together. And then, of course, anything, vegetable that you'd like for a side. If you want to put some extra seasoning on it, that's good as well. But yeah, that looks really, really good. So I'm going to try some.
It does look really good.
I wish, here, David, this is my husband, cameraman. It is so good. This reminds me of the very first time I ever had cooked wood duck, and I was so surprised. It truly is like eating a piece of steak. It's tender, it's juicy. The flavor with just the salt, pepper, and garlic powder is perfect. It doesn't overpower the meat. It just kicks it up a notch. Bam!
Well done, Lynn, and thank you, David, for your camera skills. All right, what other questions do we have brewing?
I want to ask Lynn a question about the duck.
Yeah.
Lynn, when you're out in the field taking duck, you're obviously not able to tell from a distance male or female. Do you find one to be better eating than the other? I'm assuming the males are a little bit larger, but when harvesting them.
Well, I'm horrible at duck ID. So I see a duck and I shoot it, and then I figure out what it is when it hits the water. So yeah, I'm not targeting. Now you got to be careful with that because of bagling, it's a certain species. But I'm not targeting one over the other. I'm just glad to get a duck. But yeah, I don't think I've ever really tested that to see if a hen is better than a drake. I know from a venison standpoint, usually the does and younger they are the ones you want to harvest for venison. The older bucks, they're tough and not very good. But I don't know if that really applies to ducks or not. I'll have to check that out next year and see.
Great, thanks.
Oh, and I did want to I did want to mention real quick, the way I cook the duck in the cast iron pan, you can do the exact same thing over a campfire. You can do it in an oven and you can do it on a grill. You just need to remember that on a campfire, your heat's a little bit different, as Melissa mentioned about the trout. And that takes a little bit more nuance to figure out, when the duck is done. But I did want to mention, and most of y'all might know this if you camp a lot, if you're cooking over your campfire, you need some pine and fat lighter, or your food will get sooty and piney. Any species of oak is good, hickory, pecan, even cedar will help flavor your meat and give you a good fire, give you good coals to cook on. You don't want to actually cook over an open flame because of the smoke and the particulates get on your meat. You really want a nice coal base that's nice and hot that you can work with and move stuff around as needed. I just wanted to mention that about the campfire cooking.
It's good advice. Hopefully one of these days we could probably talk about grilling over charcoal grill as well, because I think that those are also a challenge. I know I struggle with them, with balancing heat and creating your concentrations and your lows and your highs. So I don't know about you all, but this has been phenomenal and I have learned a lot. What other questions do we have, or, just in general? Okay, good. Well, it is 7:52 and we've got 3 minutes, or not 3 minutes, we've got 8 minutes to spare before 8 o'clock. We can log off early if you guys would like, or we can hang out and we can talk about some of our favorite things, whether that's hunting or that's fishing, deer season preparation. How do we get into archery? How do we get into upland game? What's going on in your guys' world? How can we help you?
Well, Bree, I was going to mention duck hunting is one of those things that sometimes it's not really easy to get into because it takes a special place and it takes some fairly, decent knowledge of where you're hunting. But if you don't go with a guide and you don't have the right gear, it's really hard to get into duck hunting. But I did want to mention we've done 2 Artemis duck hunts down near Statesboro, Georgia, the past 2 years. It's on private property. It's on the hunt lease that myself and a couple of other folks are members of, but it's got a huge beaver swamp that we're able to, all the ducks except the ringneck that I showed you were harvested at that swamp. And there's a decent number of species that are there, but we plan on doing that again this year. It will be sometime in January, probably the last weekend in January. So be on the lookout for that announcement if you're interested in actually shooting a duck. And we usually cook what we harvest while we're there. So you'll be able to experience, a fresh duck right out of the water. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that.
Thank you.
And hey, Nina, good to see you.
Hey, Lynn, Jenny again. What's the best way to practice for duck hunting? I mean, are you talking going to the clay range? What?
Yeah, going to a clay range. Sporting clays is a good practice. Dove hunting is good too, because some doves just as fast and just as agile as doves. Even pheasant hunting, if you can get into some of the pheasant hunts now are all usually pin birds around here. But if you could get in on some sort of pheasant hunt, that helps too. Anything that will help you move with the bird, identify your target, it is helpful. And you may even think about when you're duck hunting, you're usually standing in water and you have to be really careful walking around and even if you're in water. So if you've got a friend with a pool and you've got some waders or even a pond, it's also good to kind of practice walking around in muck and water and trees under the water, because that's the other thing that makes duck hunting really unique. It's very slow because you have to be really strategic as you move through the water.
Thank you, ma'am.
So Nina shared a question with us. Where is a good place to get a used gun for duck hunting? I need to get the appropriate firearm for the species I'm interested in. We can't hear you, Lynn. It didn't say you were muted.
How about now?
Now we can hear you.
Oh, I don't know what that was about. Anyway, I was going to say, duck hunting, you're talking about shotguns. Generally, 20 gauge or 12 gauge is what you're talking about. And I would think you'd be able to go to any of the hunting stores or even a pawn shop and be able to find a good used shotgun. Semi-automatic ones are the best for duck hunting because you can shoot multiple rounds in quick succession versus something like a break action shotgun, which kind of limits you. Because loading a shotgun in the middle of a swamp is always a little tricky because you end up dropping your ammo in 3 or 4 feet of water. And
You froze again. Your words.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know where I left off, but semi-autos, the 12 or 20 is good.
I think it's also worth noting to get I'm also in the market for a shotgun. And so I'm looking for synthetic stock so that I don't have a wooden stock that I need to worry about in the water.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was always a diehard wood stock person until I actually had a synthetic stock. And I still have wood stocks, but I love the synthetic. You can beat them up, you can get them wet, you can forget to dry them off, and they're still good to go. And that's the other thing about duck hunting. You will eventually drop your gun in the water. It's just one of those things that you do. If you're not dropping your gun, you're not duck hunting right. So yes, synthetic is really the way to go.
And thanks, Morgan, for mentioning if you know what kind of gun you want, you can go to gunbroker.com to buy used guns. And then the other thing I would recommend, what I'm currently doing is I found, and I know that this is what Jenny did too, find a shooting coach who can start to teach you how to shoot so you can learn what type of gun fits your body best and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and I've found too that going to a shooting facility, there's one in Elberton that's really cool. There's the National Wild Turkey Federation has one in Edgefield, which is just across the border from Georgia. You can go to those types of places and they'll have multiple guns that you can try and kind of get a better idea of what really fits you and what feels good to you. Because that's a big part of buying a gun. It's like buying a pair of shoes. If you buy a pair of shoes that don't fit, you're not going to wear them because they're not comfortable. So if you have a friend that can help you, and a lot of these events that we go to, we'll swap guns just so people can learn to shoot new guns. So.
Yeah, I have really long arms and I settled on a Beretta A300, which is the semi-automatic that Lynn was talking about. But yeah, getting a gun fit to you, it's worth the money to pay an instructor to help you figure that out.
Yeah, and price doesn't make a difference. I have a gun that is a pretty pricey gun, and I was using it, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And I got a much less expensive gun that fit me a lot better. And my shooting has improved. So what works for one person may not work for you. Try different price points. Like I said, I have a very inexpensive one and it works best for me. I love it. So the fitting, I echo that point that everybody has made.
And just another thing, and I'm not hating on anybody, but you need to find a professional. You may not get the best advice from your husband or your boyfriend or your brother because they're looking for a gun that they want you to have. not what works for you. And they don't mean it, bad, but they always do that. You need to go to a person who's used to fitting guns for women.
I want to reiterate, fitting guns for women. So if you think about the market, if you think about who guns are primarily made for, they're made for their customers, and their average customer is a 5'8" man. And so guns are created for those sizes and those demographics. So you've got to take that into account, consider a youth, consider a compact, but you try them out. Look for the guns that work for your shape. Well, friends, we are at 8:01, which means it is time to wrap up. You're welcome to stay on a little bit longer if you have any additional questions, but for those that need to hop off, thank you so much for joining us. Lynn, Jen, and David, and Melissa, thank you for your assistance this evening. It was awesome.
Thank you.